Have you ever thought about the correlation between consciousness, ego, and manifestation? Recognizing that the importance of understanding the balance between consciousness and ego is about truly recognizing the whole picture of who you are and your nature as a creator, as somebody who ultimately materializes and manifests things on a constant basis. When you recognize the connection between consciousness and ego and how it correlates to manifestation, then you will take the topics of consciousness and ego way more seriously. And this is my objective with these videos that I'm making. Understand that when you think about consciousness and ego, a lot of times people are focused a lot on ego. Now, yes, ego, it is very important to acknowledge the ego, but oftentimes along this spiritual journey and in life, we focus on the thing with the lowest vibration, the lowest frequency. It's just like when we focus more on what we don't want rather than what we do want. Now, remember that consciousness and ego are two sides of a spectrum. Ultimately, they mean and are the same essence, right? You. And they are just the furthest sides from one another, but they are still you. And as you think about the things that you wish to manifest and create, a lot of times, fundamentally, when it comes to spirituality, law of attraction, manifestation, fundamental is to always think about what it is you do want. But the ego, because of its nature, because its mechanism to stay in this survival mindset, it tends to think about the worst case scenario. It tends to think about the lowest frequency of possibilities because it is the lowest frequency of who you are. So it is doing what it's supposed to do. It is trying to protect you from experiencing that lower frequency of results. Now, what you must do, though, is recognize through consciousness that though it is a possibility, right, to experience the lowest frequency of results or possibility, that it is very unlikely. Now, your job, though, is to follow consciousness and trust in the possibility of you actually being meant to do what it is that you desire to do, because that is why you are inspired upon it, right? That's why it is inspired upon you to think of it, to want it, to desire it. Now, when you balance your ego versus your consciousness and you recognize that your ego is doing what it's supposed to do, which is preparing you or preventing you or supporting you in a way of protection, right? And when we think of protection, we're thinking in terms of lack. We're thinking in terms of, survival, worst case scenario. That is the definition of why and what protection is, right? We protect to prevent harm, because the mentality is, from that point of view, is that there are harmful things out there and we don't want to experience that harm or be hurt. Now, we just have to not let that part of yourself take over and be the dominant expression, the dominant character of who you are. And this is how and why it's important to recognize the ego's place and thus be led by consciousness in recognizing that, okay, though that is a possibility, it is very slim, almost impossible, right? But the ego is coming from that space of, well, even though it is not likely, almost impossible to happen, it can still happen. And so you have to not be led by that, because if you're led by that, then chances are you won't do it. You won't do what it takes to achieve the desire that you wish. So when you understand the significance and the balancing of consciousness and ego when it comes to your goals, your passions, the things that you desire, then you recognize that it relates directly with manifestation. And this is why it's important for you to understand the balancing act between consciousness and ego. And now remember, true balance isn't the consciousness and ego being the same at the same level. You, in fact, want to be imbalanced. That is the true balance. And when I say imbalance, I mean you really want consciousness to be in the lead, to be more than ego. You want your consciousness to lead you and take you just 1% more than the ego wishes to hold you back. You see, you must understand that it isn't as important to want to focus on pulling the ego away, right? Managing the ego, or focusing on getting rid of the ego or quieting the ego. Don't focus on the ego as your primary focus when it comes to achieving this balance. Because when you focus on the thing, you give that thing strength. So when you focus on the ego, you are essentially making the ego stronger. Now, yes, you want to acknowledge the ego, and I know that maybe that sounds confusing, but you want to acknowledge what it is, what it does, its nature. But you really want to focus on consciousness, because as you focus on consciousness more than the ego, you essentially make consciousness stronger. The nature of thinking about the ego is really thinking about the two as a whole, because you just don't want to neglect aspects of yourself that are, in fact, engaging and a big part of you moving forward in life and achieving the things that you desire. So as you set these goals and as you move forward, you must recognize that though really thinking about both are necessary, they are imperative, but you must focus on consciousness, building up consciousness, following consciousness, listening to consciousness. And as you listen to consciousness, you're going to notice that the ego is going to try to convince you to do otherwise, to try to stop you from following consciousness, because the ego's nature is to look for what is wrong, what can go wrong. That is his nature. Your job, though, following consciousness, is to, one, observe those thoughts, observe those, instincts. And when I say observe, recognize that the thoughts aren't who you are, right? Remember, when you think about manifestation, when you think about meditation, when you think about mindfulness, the thoughts are just expressions, right? They are random. They are something that oftentimes happen, and we are not the thoughts, we're not the emotions, we're the individual, we're the entity observing those thoughts and emotions. They are not you. They are just simply expressions coming from you. And they are a result of many layers of who you are: your ego, subconscious mind, conscious mind, and so much more. Now, you have to just simply recognize that as you are having these thoughts, whether it is continuously being led by consciousness and paying attention to how the ego shows up and speaks fear, speaks doubt, right? Speaks protection. You're going to monitor and listen, right? You're going to pay attention. And then you're going to use your conscious mind to observe and analyze if those things make sense and align with who you are or who you desire to be, right? So remember that who you desire to be is truly who you are. We're just on a journey of self-realization. We're on the journey of tapping into that true sense, that true essence, the true self. So recognize that this process is one that leans more into the thing that you desire, leans more into the higher frequency, vibration, existence, and essence. Now, we often hear that the ego is the enemy. We want to have this experience, the ego death, where we stop the ego in its tracks and we get rid of the ego. This is not my belief system. This is not what I teach, because I think the ego is, in fact, necessary in this physical world. Your job, though, is to observe and monitor this ego and make sure that it is in its proper place. But mainly, you do that by only focusing on advancing consciousness, listening to consciousness. When you listen to consciousness, you strengthen consciousness. When you listen to consciousness, you strengthen your faith, your resolve, your trust in yourself and the universe that is one with you, that you are one with. You see, and this is the objective. The journey is about coming into the understanding and following consciousness, so that way you truly understand your nature as a creator. And when you understand your nature, the more you understand your nature as a creator, then you are inclined to truly create the reality that you desire. That reality that resonates with your true self. So understand, consciousness, ego are directly related with manifestation and you achieving your goals. You just have to conceptualize this in a way that understands and acknowledges this balance that's happening between two aspects of yourself that is often in conflict with one another, because we haven't accepted the two as a necessary part of who you are. They are the whole of who you are. And when you understand that, then you come into a space of acceptance of the complete picture. And when you come into an acceptance of the complete picture of you, then you truly come into loving yourself. And that love then radiates out the frequency of abundance, prosperity, and thus creating the things that you desire and understanding the true balance of self in order to manifest and create the true essence of your desires. Thank you so much. Feel free to go to drabundant.com, subscribe to my daily newsletter, and I invite you to join my Conscious Creator Circle, which is a paid membership that allows you to get more access throughout my blogs with techniques every day that I post. You also will be able to join my weekly calls and engage with me and help you to truly support you in understanding that you are a creator. And so now you get to become a conscious creator and thus create the true reality that you want and achieve the goals that you truly have and desire and not feel like something is holding you back. Okay? So thank you again. Continue to join me on this journey. Peace and abundance always.